Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The head of the Metropolitan Police has insisted the force hasn't lost control of London's streets. Following a string of murders in the capital, Commissioner Cressida Dick said this wasn't a time for blame, but for working together, although she did say her officers were stretched. Our home editor, Mark Easton, has a story.
More than 50 killings in the capital since the beginning of the year, a catalogue of tragedy that has shone a spotlight on the work of the Metropolitan Police and its Commissioner, Cressida Dick. Almost exactly a year after taking the helm at Scotland Yard, she has found herself having to respond to a wave of public anxiety and anger.
Commissioner, have you lost control of the streets of London?
We have not lost control of the streets. I can understand why some people are very worried at the moment.
People are frightened.
Particularly in some areas of London. We've had some ghastly homicides, as you know, particularly in the last few days, including those of really young people. That is bound to be very frightening.
People are scared stiff out there. What can you say to reassure them?
What I can say is that the Metropolitan Police are out there. Just this weekend we have an extra 300 officers each day in the areas which are the most significant hotspots where there's been high levels of knife crime. But they are above and beyond all the other officers, those who are working in covert roles, those who are on patrol, those who are in the neighbourhoods, the people who are saving lives every day, arresting people, taking weapons off the streets, targeting the most violent and doing everything they can to bear down on street violence.
Have you, though, got enough resources? Have you got enough police officers?
Every police chief would always want more officers and more resources, of course. It's my job to make the case for more and also to make the best use of what we've got.
Well, do you think that the awful, tragic spike in homicides that we've seen this year is down to cuts in police budgets?
No, I don't. I think that our job is stretched, but the causes of knife crime, the causes of violent crime, are very complex and long-running. This is something I talked about from the day I arrived as one of my highest priorities. I'm really sorry these people have lost their lives. I don't say they've lost their lives because we've suffered cuts, but of course I need to make the best use of my officers. I need to get as many people as I can out on the streets. That's what we're doing this weekend. That's what we'll be doing in the weeks to come.
You talk about priorities. What about the priority of infiltrating the gangs, of getting that intelligence that means that you're one step ahead?
Now, these are challenging offences to investigate. But of course you will probably have noticed that we nearly always arrest people, we nearly always charge people. We have a fantastic homicide investigation capability. Of the 5 tragic cases this week, we have arrested already in all but 1.
Among the 5 arrests confirmed by the Commissioner today is that of a 30-year-old man in connection with the murder of Tanisha Melbourne, who was shot in Tottenham on Monday. But while progress in these cases will take some pressure off the Met, the Commissioner accepts that more important is to prevent the killings from happening in the first place.
Mark, Cressida Dick is keen, of course, to stress her officers are on top of all this, but just how unusual is this string of attacks that we've seen?
Well, Clive, you do get spikes in violence, not just tit-for-tat killings, but obviously if you've got fear on the streets, people are more likely to carry a weapon. You've got more knives out there, it's more likely that they will be used. And by focusing on violence, by all the headlines that we're seeing, it can make it appear as though things are getting continually worse. There have been reports today, you may have seen them, of 7 stabbings in London just yesterday. But actually, on an average day in April last year, there were 14 stabbings. So context here is important, but I think it's also a salutary reminder, you know, to our politicians, to our police officers and other agencies of what is the day-to-day reality of people living in our cities and what more needs to be done to reduce those risks.
Mark, thank you for that. Mark Easton there in North East London.
Here, the head of the Metropolitan Police has told ITV News that London is still a safe city as the number of murders and violent attacks continues to grow. Cressida Dick says she's putting hundreds of extra officers on the capital's streets and called on the wider community to help tackle the cycle of violence. Speaking to Paul Davis, the Commissioner warned those responsible that we will get you.
With the headlines talking of an epidemic of murder and violent crime, the country's top police officer wanted to be seen on the streets, reassuring those whose neighbourhoods have become associated with nightly bloodshed. In light of recent events, her message might come as a surprise.
London is mainly a very safe city. For most people, most of the time, they will go about their business completely untroubled by knife crime. But we have seen more knife crime homicides affecting the young.
Last night, the capital witnessed another 6 stabbings, the latest challenge for a force investigating a spate of murders, and is about to be reinforced, its commander says.
This weekend, I have 300 officers a day extra out in the most vulnerable hotspot areas, because this is in particular places, particular times of the day are most affected by this.
There are people saying that those hotspots you talk about, those streets, that you've lost control of some of those streets. Do you accept that?
No, I don't, but I think I can understand why, if you live in that area, you would feel very, very concerned about what's been going on.
So far this year, from January to April, the Met has recorded 55 suspected murders in London. That's just under half the total number in the capital last year, when there were 116. The victims included 17-year-old Tanisha Melbourne, who was shot dead in a drive-by attack in Tottenham on Monday, and 18-year-old Israel Ogunzola, who was stabbed to death on Wednesday.
At a time when an increasing number of voices are saying there are parts of the capital where police have lost control, the Commissioner had a warning for those who carry and use guns and knives. You will be caught.
We nearly always convict people for murder in these cases. They can be complex investigations. We never give up, and we will bring people to justice. I hope that is some small comfort to people who have lost people.
Today, a man was charged over the fatal shooting of teenager Tanisha Melbourne. Paul Davis, ITV News.
Now, violence has continued to grip the capital, with 7 more people injured in stabbings since yesterday, 6 in the space of an hour and a half. The Metropolitan Police called an emergency meeting of community leaders to discuss a strategy for dealing with this spike in violent crime. But for those whose lives have been devastated by knife attacks, this latest spate of attacks is a horrifying reminder of what it actually means to be involved. I spoke earlier to Patrick Boyce. His young son Jamel was left with life-changing injuries when he was stabbed. Patrick began by telling me what he remembers about that day.
I got some brunch together, gave him some money, gave him a hug and said to him, love you, and I'll see you later. About 7:30 that evening, I got a call saying that Jamel has been stabbed and he was taken to King's College Hospital. I got myself down there. Then I saw this surgeon, the air ambulance surgeon, who actually saved Jamel's life after he got stabbed. He came in and told me exactly what happened, how he had to open his chest and sew back up his lung and heart, start to massage his heart to get his blood circulating again. Basically, he was dead at that stage. They said they don't know if it's a 50-50 chance that if he would pull through to the morning.
So initially, when they told you that he would live, you must have been very relieved.
Yes, yes. When I heard he was still alive, it was just, that was such an emotional stage.
But then they told you the extent of his injuries.
Well, then a consultant came in, she was quite blunt about diagnostics regarding Jamel. He's partially blind, he's partially deaf, he can't walk, can't talk. He has to be fed through a tube. They feed him through a tube.
Because to speak to him and not know whether he hears you must be difficult.
It is difficult. Like yesterday, I was with him out in the garden, and was playing him music, talking to him, stroking his head and everything, and we got him inside and he started to smile, and I thought, wow, that was just so beautiful, really beautiful.
When you go in to see Jamel, what would you like people to know who pick up a knife, who carry out these crimes? What do they need to know? You're
idiots. What you're doing is totally against your whole human being. There's a consequence to pay for this. You know, you're ruining your life and you're taking away somebody else's life as well. And you're ruining families around that. So the ripple effect from that action you've done in that split second the ripples carry on forever.
It must have been a very difficult decision as a family to decide to release the pictures of Jamal in hospital. Why did you do that? What did you hope to gain from that?
People need to see the consequences of the actions that these children are carrying out. I want people to realise what this could happen to you. My son wasn't in a gang, he didn't carry a knife, he was coming from college. And so he was just a normal boy going about his normal business, met his friends after college, and he's now, his life's virtually over. You need to be on your children, you need to be, know where your children are, know what your children are doing, know what friends your children are keeping. That's the only way you're going to have any chance of protecting them from this epidemic that we're seeing at the moment.
And you do believe it is an epidemic?
It's an epidemic. It's going to get worse. I don't think the police are taking it seriously. Well, police have got cuts. We know that their budgets have been cut. There's not so many officers on the street. And we need to reverse that. We need to get the police back on the street as sort of a deterrent. I mean, I'm not too much into stop and search, but just having the presence on the streets would deter a lot of these crimes that have been happening at the moment.
Tell me a little bit about Jamal growing up.
You know, when he was younger, he was cute, running up and down, he was a little cheeky. I love the way that he's grown through his primary schools, and he went to college, and the same year that, sorry, he was doing so well at college that year, and I was really proud of him. Yeah, I was just proud of him. I don't want to see another child in the situation my boy is in. I don't want to hear about another death. I'm tired of the deaths, I'm tired of the stabbings, and it's just, it's breaking up the fabrics of our communities, it's breaking up families, it's just devastating.
Patrick Boyce speaking to me earlier. Well, I spoke today to Metropolitan Police Commissioner Cressida Dick. 55 people have been killed since the beginning of the year. We're only in April. 6 stabbings yesterday in the space of 95 minutes. If you don't call it an epidemic, what would you describe it as?
This is a huge city. It is mainly a very safe city. It remains a safe city. We have had knife crime, actually probably since the city was invented. Our rate of knife crime and homicide per population per head of population is not actually extraordinarily high, certainly not when compared with other big cities around the world. London is a safe city, but we've had a ghastly 3 months.
Are you confident when you say it is a safe city for everybody?
I think if I lived in some of the streets or some of the areas where they've had more than one knife crime incident, or they've had a murder, I might well feel really uncertain and indeed frightened about the safety of young people in the area. I completely understand that. We have too much violence, we have too much knife crime, and it is affecting some communities far more than others. I think it is profoundly shocking that if you're a young black man, you are 10 times more likely to be killed. This is not a straightforward thing to solve. It's not something the police can solve by ourselves.
But it remains a failing of the police with those figures, doesn't it?
I do think it is a stain on London, but it is not something the police themselves, by themselves, can stop or prevent entirely. There's all sorts of challenges here. There's all sorts of reasons why we are having this happen. We have our part to play, and in the coming weeks, indeed in the coming days and the coming months and years, you will see even more effort by the Met to save lives, to protect people. We are here for everybody, and we police more in the areas of highest crime. We are increasing our presence. This weekend I will have 300 extra officers a day in the areas which have been most vulnerable to knife crime.
One of the key questions is, do you have enough officers? Because the Mayor clearly thinks you need more. The Home Office seems to suggest you don't. Which one of those is correct in your view?
So you'll remember that in the autumn of last year we made an evidence-based case to government and indeed to the Mayor. And as a result of that, through the government change, Mayor changing things, we have been given another 112, 15 million pounds to be able to invest ourselves in policing and, yeah, from the mayor, in policing and in police officers, and we will do that, and they will all be going into the most vulnerable areas and into...
But what about from government, from Home Office?
Well, I don't want to get involved in the politics of this, of course I don't. I'm a police officer, I'm an operational person. It's my job, where I think I need to make an evidence-based case. I have done that, I will do that in the future. I'm not going to debate it here.
But there's no doubt you're stretched.
We're stretched. We are stretched.
And during a spate like this, you need the resources and the officers.
We are stretched. We are a police service of 40,000 people. 30,000 police officers. This is an enormous, as I say, mostly safe, vibrant, global city. It's my job to reprioritise, to flex, to surge, to take people away from one task and put them onto another. That's exactly what we're doing. We are responding to the homicides that have been happening.
And there is, of course, always a huge question about the issue of stop and search. Figures have fallen to a 2-year low, the use of stop and search. Do you think that has played a part in what we're seeing at the moment?
What we have seen in the last months, which encourages me, is an increase in weapons stop and search and the number of weapons seized as a result of stop and search. And that, I think, is the most important thing. Secondly, we have seen an increase in the use of Section 60. We have 6 Section 60s in place as I speak. These are small areas in which we fear serious violence may occur, in which officers can and will be carrying out stop and search in the coming hours without having to have reasonable grounds. That has also increased a lot in the last few months. So I think that is going in the right direction. I'm very actually proud of the professionalism of my officers. I don't want them doing stop and search randomly.
So it is a valuable tool and you will use more targeted stop and search if you need to?
Yes, and I believe our communities support us.
If this spate of terrible killings continue, do you reach a point where you think, I'm not doing my job properly?
I'm determined that this spate does not go on increasing in the way it has. Absolutely, I am focused on that as my #1 priority. I want to see the number of young people being killed coming back down. I cannot possibly say to you that we will reduce knife crime to, very, very low levels overnight. Of course we won't. It would be ridiculous to suggest that. I hope that we'll be able, together with our public and together with the mayor and other agencies and the people who are working hard to divert young people away from crime, I hope we can reduce homicide affecting young people.
Just on a personal note, you're obviously a police officer with a job to do, but when you hear every day of these young boys, mainly young men, being killed by other young men, I mean, what do you think?
The death of a young person is an awful thing, and everyone actually does, I think, touches my officers. We feel strongly about it, we get angry about it. But whatever it is, we have to be professionals. But this police service is a caring and compassionate police service of human people, and we are touched by each crime.
Commissioner, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, says the police should feel confident to stop and search people to combat the recent spike in violent crime. He said such powers could help make London safer if used in a targeted way. 300 extra officers have now been deployed after 6 people were killed in shootings and stabbings in the last 7 days. Here's Simon Jones.
Lives lost, families grieving, some living in fear. And the growing question, what can be done to tackle violent crime? With calls for the police to make more use of controversial powers to stop and search suspects for weapons. The number of searches has fallen dramatically in recent years amid fears that poorer areas and ethnic minority groups were being disproportionately targeted.
Look, when stop and search is used properly, it's an invaluable tool to the police, and what we want is more targeted, intelligence-led stop and search.
Hundreds of extra officers are on the streets of London this weekend, but some academics question whether using stop and search significantly reduces violent crime. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Cressida Dick, says she backs searches done in a way that is targeted and intelligence-led. In East London, there's some support.
This is the right time to do it. Seen too many kills.
People could feel targeted as well, that, why am I being stopped rather than me or this guy or this woman or so on and so forth.
Let them stop me and search me. Let them stop even the girls, because the girls are also in the gangs.
Here in Hackney, flowers mark the spot where 18-year-old Israel Ogunshola lost his life this week. He was stabbed to death. Many here say they've had enough. They want an end to the violence, but there's recognition there may be no simple, quick fix. One former chief superintendent with the Met says much more needs to be done to prevent young people carrying weapons in the first place.
I think we need to be doing much more in schools, and certainly when I've spoken to parents of children who've been murdered, one thing they say, all of them, without exception, is that they want to see much more intervention at an earlier stage in schools.
As the grieving continues, the Mayor of London has invited the Home Secretary and all London's MPs to a knife crime summit next week to discuss what else can be done in the fight against violence that is ruining so many lives. Simon Jones, BBC News.
I've been